Gathering voices, building worlds. The Ampliverse.
Welcome to Harry Potter and the Anxious Millennials, a show where we delve week by week into each chapter of the Harry Potter series.
I was waiting until you started recording to tell you this. I don't know what made me remember this memory from when we were 12, but I don't know if I ever told you that this was something that I did or not. Do you remember, like, sometimes you guys would come over and we would, like, record either, like, little videos or, like, record audio recordings just of us, like, being stupid? So, like, you and I did the one from High School Musical one time.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one time where Padel came over and I can't remember if I recorded it before she was there or something. I think we recorded like the Britney Spears Toxic song or something like that. It was all just like crackhead behavior, like just like stupid.
Jesus.
Like, what were we doing? But somehow in the vaults of my memory, I remembered. Do you know the song from Aladdin? What is it? You've never had a friend like me. I almost said You've Got a Friend in Me from Toy Story.
Yeah.
Different film. Okay. The song You Ain't Never Had a Friend Like Me. I remembered that I recorded a clip of myself singing instead of Mr. Aladdin, sir, Mr. Radcliffe, sir. You ain't never had a friend with benefits like me. And I was like trying to remember. I was like, was that it? Like, because I wish I could tell you what made me remember it. Like, I was like, why am I remembering that all of a sudden? But I remember like recording, what is it? It's like, well, Mr. Radcliffe, sir, what would your something be?
What will your pleasure be?
What would your pleasure be? Let me take your order, jot it down. You ain't never had a friend with benefits like me. Being like 12 and recording that. And I just need to know, any fellow Harry Potter fans out there, do you remember writing songs, changing the words of a song to your favorite Harry Potter actor? I just need to know. I'm like trying to remember if I did that by myself or if someone was like over the house with me. Clearly it wasn't Adam because he has no memory of this.
My recollection is that you weren't Radcliffe was not your favorite. Wasn't Rupert always your favorite?
Okay, so Rupert
Or were we in an era?
No. I think so. Rupert was always Allie's favorite. I remember, definitely she was like Team Rupert all the time. I remember it would depend on the movie because I think like the third movie, I remember I was like more Team Dan, and then the fourth movie I was like Team Cedric because
Team
the
Nobody.
hair, Team Nobody. The hair was so bad. And then like the fifth movie, I was maybe more Team Ron than Harry, but we were all really Team Dean.
Oh my
God. If you remember. Because Dean, all of a sudden, we were all like, oh, who is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, out of nowhere. Alfie. But I don't remember. I think I just simply did Mr. Radcliffe because it's the same as Mr. Aladdin.
The syllables, yeah.
Wait, is it though? Aladdin? No, it's not. It isn't. So I don't know why I did it.
Well, it's closer than Grint.
Yeah, that's true. But yeah, that file is gone now because that computer doesn't exist anymore. It was taken to the dump. But like,
were you alone when you were doing this?
I had to have been.
That is so funny.
That's why I'm like, there wasn't anyone there with me. It was only me on the recording. I'm
more impressed that you knew what a friend with benefits was that long ago. Because I feel like I didn't know what it was until like college.
I mean, I think there had to have been a conversation about that at some point. I don't know, but I had to have been like 12 or 13 recording. And here we are, full circle.
And we're back.
And we're back recording on our computers.
That is so funny.
Here we are.
Ari, this week,
we
read chapter 13 called Detention with Dolores.
Mm-hmm.
What happens in this chapter?
Harry experiences multiple nights of detention with Dolores while also trying to juggle his schoolwork, his massive amounts of schoolwork.
Yeah.
Eh?
Anything else? One other big thing happens?
One other big thing happens, and a keeper is chosen for the Gryffindor Quidditch team.
That's
Yeah,
what
we'll say that. And a keeper is chosen. So yeah, the chapter starts off with everyone just basically like crap talking Harry very loudly around him. So everyone's just like essentially loud whispering so he can hear, like a stage whisper.
Yeah.
I can't believe he did that. Can you believe that? Do you think he really thinks we believe him? Like, just like the worst type of whispering that you could imagine, like not really a whisper.
Right.
So he's trying to eat at in the Great Hall. Hermione suggests that they just leave the Great Hall while everyone's staring at them. To which Ron is very upset because he was in the middle of eating an apple pie. So as they're storming out of the Great Hall, to Ron's chagrin, much to Ron's chagrin, Hermione is explaining, because Harry's like, well, didn't they all believed it before, and now all of a sudden they don't believe it? And she's like, I don't think they really did believe it. Like, you have to understand from an outside perspective. She's like, try and put yourself in someone else's shoes. Like,
which Harry could never
he
do.
Can't, cannot. She's like, you appeared out of the maze suddenly holding Cedric's dead body. Like, we didn't know what was going on. We were all very confused. And then like Dumbledore tells everyone that like Voldemort came back from the dead. Like, I think I understand why Harry's like frustrated with that, because it is a situation of like, I don't want this to be true, but this is true. But it's just like, you have to, Hermione's trying to be like, you just have to have some understanding of like, it is kind of a wild thing that people are, and then to just hear that out of nowhere at the end of the year, and then you go home for the summer and you're just met with all of this media that's basically telling you like he's losing it and like Harry's kind of a mess and all that stuff. It's just, of course, that's what people are going to kind of start to buy into, just because that's the only angle that's being promoted.
And like Voldemort is smart enough to not immediately start attacking people. Like, he's going to lay low so that it looks worse for Harry and Dumbledore. Yeah,
exactly. So Hermione makes this point, to which Harry like snaps at her again. And he's like, that didn't happen. And she's like, I know. And I believe you. So can you just not? Anyways, like I was saying.
Yeah.
Which I mean, more power to Hermione. Because like at this point, I would just be like, okay, you know what? I'm just not even going to try to help you. Like,
for real.
It's just like, I'm on your side, dude. Okay. Like, I don't know what else to tell you.
He's already snapped at her multiple times at this point, and by that I mean like multiple times into the course of like multiple chapters. But these chapters have all been in the course of like 2 days.
Yeah.
So like, I would be so tired of it by this point.
And it says that she is like essentially like exasperated when she says something, that I'm just wearily. Like, I was like, well, you're lucky that she said it wearily, because I would have snapped. Like, I would have snapped back. So they get back to the Gryffindor common room, which is almost empty because obviously everyone else is still at dinner. And Hermione honestly makes a really good point. She's just like, I'm so upset that Dumbledore has let this happen. Like, why is she here? Why is he allowing this to happen? Like, Ron's like, well, she's probably here to spy on us. And Hermione's like, yeah, obviously. Welcome. I just love it. I'm
Welcome
like,
to 2 chapters ago, Ronald.
Yeah, like I'm just like, ugh. So she's like, yeah, of course that's why she's here. Duh. And then after this, Ron gets out his homework and then basically asks Hermione to do it for him. I was just like,
so the properties of Moonstone are, Hermione? Properties of Moonstone? Do you want to just let me know so I can just write it down?
Can you just
I I do need you to spell moonstone for me because I don't even know how to spell moonstone.
What is a moonstone?
Right. What is a potion?
Well, yeah, what is a potion? So thankfully, Hermione is not listening to him at all because she is observing Fred and George over in the corner who are testing out their silly sweets on first years. So Hermione tries to get Ron to come with her, to which Ron like kind of stands up and then sits back down and says she's got it under control. And I was like, oh no, here we go. I just want to say I understand that this was like a trope at the time. Like it's kind of similar to like Mrs. Weasley being the one that's always like serious and Arthur's just kind of like bopping along or whatever.
Lets the kids do whatever, yeah.
Yes, it's
very
a dynamic
sitcom energy.
Yeah. I always think of Mrs. Doubtfire. I always think of that it's like the mother is taking care of the dad as well, basically. And that this is a narrative that's like funny. It's like, oh yeah, the dad never grows up. Ha ha, so funny. And I'm like, that sounds like a nightmare as an adult woman.
Yeah.
That sounds like my nightmare. So I understand this is not a new trope, but it's just, I can't help but be like, ugh, at it. They try to get Hermione off their back by saying that they're paying them. Okay, that's not going to matter, you guys. And Lee Jordan's like, look, they're fine. It's okay. As he's putting like another sweet into their mouth. But Harry makes a note, or I guess like the narrator makes a note that, well, it's Harry. Harry's our narrator. So Harry observes that it's pretty obvious that they didn't know those sweets they were trying were going to have that effect on them.
We're going to cause them to pass out.
Yeah, because they're fainting fancies. Great, thank you. Thank you for that.
I like that she describes them as having their tongues hanging out of their mouths.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Ah.
So Hermione's like, you have to stop this, like knock it off. And they're like, what are you gonna do? You're gonna put us in detention? Oh, you're gonna make us write lines? Oh, and she's like, no, but I will write to your mother. And then it's very serious suddenly. And they're like, you wouldn't. She's like, oh, yes, I would. And then they're like furious at her because they're just like, oh, no, that is too far.
Below the belt. How dare you?
Yeah, below the belt. And then Hermione returns to her seat and thanks Ron for his support. You know what I would have said? I would have been like, well, if Dean was in the room. If Dean was in the room, I would have been like, Dean, would you like to take over Ronald's
job?
Ronald's prefect responsibilities, Dean?
Mm-hmm. I don't remember much about Ronald being a prefect other than I remember this narrative of him like not wanting to
that's pretty much
discipline his brothers. But I'm trying to be like, do we get at any point in this book series a moment where it's like, oh, he did deserve this? I feel like we don't.
I don't think so. I don't think there's ever a moment where it's like, oh yeah, he's a good prefect. Which I'm like, why did you do it then? Like you kind of have to, if you're going to do that, you kind of have to give us a moment where that happens.
Yeah, to make it worth it.
Yeah. So Hermione's very frustrated after this and she's like, I'm just going to go to bed. I can't concentrate. But before she goes to bed, she puts out these like little lumpy things, which are then revealed to be hats for the house elves that she has knitted. But she's covering them up with rubbish to try and like trick the house elves into getting them. And then Ron's like, wait, why are you doing that?
This wouldn't work, right? There's no way this would work.
I don't think so.
Because she doesn't own them.
No, but I mean, the whole thing is just bizarre.
Anyone can give them a piece of...
Yeah, like they just touch, like then they wouldn't be able to help with laundry.
Right.
No, there's no way.
The warsh. That's my mother would say.
But this is just like bizarre because like once again we're doing the thing of like it's like a weird thing with like consent that Hermione's like, well, I know best for them and they should be free. And then, but it's like bad that she wants them to be. It's weird, girl. This whole thing is weird. We talk about it all the time, but like it just gets worse as it goes on. That's like all I'm going to say about it, because I don't really want to waste anyone's time.
No.
But it's just the more and more this goes on, you're just like, what is happening?
Yeah.
It's very bizarre. She
Why
tells
did
Ron
she
not to
do
touch
this?
them. I don't know. It doesn't add anything to the story.
It really doesn't. It truly doesn't. It doesn't add anything to the story. It doesn't add anything to the characterizations of these characters. I just like... It should have just been contained to book 4, and I still would have complained about it in book 4, but at least then it would have been like...
It would have been over, like, in that book. Yeah.
Right. Because nobody ever changes their mind about it. There's no point at which any other character is like, oh, you're right.
They're never liberated. For all we know,
correct.
It's just slavery continues in the wizarding world.
And then they fight in the Battle of Hogwarts. Like, my God.
What are we saying here?
My God.
Hermione's like, don't touch those hats, Ron. And he waits until she goes away, and then he doesn't remove the hats, but he does remove the rubbish so that they know essentially that they're going to be grabbing a hat. So Harry and Ron also go to bed because Hermione isn't there to do their homework for them. And as Harry goes to bed, Seamus maybe was about to talk to him, but Harry, he does not have time for that, and he ignores him.
What do you think he was going to say? I have high hopes that Seamus would have been like, I'm sorry for saying what I said yesterday. I don't think Seamus is like fully on Harry's side, but I think Seamus is a big enough person to be like, I should not have had an argument with you about this.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like after what...
That's expecting a lot from a 15-year-old boy, by the way.
Yeah, it is. It is. The next morning, Hermione shares that she's very excited because the hats are gone. Someone has taken them. Mm-hmm. And then basically they go to class. I'm not going to go through all the different classes except Care of Magical Creatures, which they have with the Slytherins. And I was just like, ugh, sorry.
Yeah.
Any class with the Slytherins just sounds terrible. Professor Grubbly Plank commences class immediately. And Harry tries to ask her where Hagrid is. Harry, she doesn't know.
Why would
Do you know any sub that would...
Unless it was
any
like...
sub that would have any idea where the... Girl, no. Dumbledore just told her to show up and she said, okay, I'm getting that check.
Unless it's like someone who... like your teacher's going out because they're on maternity leave and your sub would know like they're having a baby.
Well, he's on paternity leave.
Yeah.
I
mean, him and Madame Maxime had a wild 9 months.
In that cave. It's just bizarre. I like kept thinking about that. I was just like, she doesn't know? You mean like, where's Hagrid? She genuinely is like, never you mind, because I don't have anything to say to you. Also, like, any student that asked me that, even if I knew, I would be like, that's none of your fucking business. Yeah.
He's a teacher. Like, you're a student. What are you, friends? Not knowing that they are like friends or whatever.
Like, yeah. I'm just like, you're wasting your time. Like, I don't even know why you tried. Anyway, so they have a very nice Care of Magical Creatures lesson. We're introduced to these little stick figure pixie-like things called bow truckles. And they are tree. Yeah, great name. And they are tree guardians who live in wand trees, and they eat wood lice, or if they can get them, fairy eggs, which Hermione answers all of these questions. She knows what they are. She knows what they eat, and she earns 10 points for Gryffindor. So good on you, Hermione. Professor Grubbly Plank explains that the bow truckle, they need to be careful because the bow truckles can poke their eyes out with their sharp little arms. And I was like, great. Love it.
I also do want to mention that Hermione has earlier in the day won 10 points to Gryffindor because she's the first one in Transfiguration to complete the vanishing spell.
Oh, she did earlier. Oh, great. Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay, so
She's up
in
to
one
20
day
points.
alone. Yeah, in one day alone, Hermione has earned 20 points. Yeah. So while the lesson is continuing, Malfoy starts hinting that Hagrid is messing with things that are too big for him. And I'm just like, does Lucius just like tell Draco whatever is going on? Like, I'm just like, that's a little weird to me. I don't know. I'm like, is your dad writing you letters being like, this is what's happening with? Because I'm just like, Malfoy just knows everything that's happening, basically. I don't know.
Yeah, I can
It's
never
the
get a
same thing
good
with like Sirius Black.
right. I can never get a good gauge on the level at which Lucius is in the Death Eaters. Like, is he high up? Is he just one of the normal ones, but we just know his name because we know his, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, is it that Crabbe and Goyle and Malfoy all talk about it and they kind of have deduced things from certain things their individual parents have told them?
Right.
I also don't think Voldemort is stupid enough to like say some of this stuff to anybody who's a Death Eater. You know what I mean? So it would have to be someone higher up.
Yeah.
But then he makes the whole big deal when in the last book where he's like, Lucius, you betrayed me, blah, 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 blah. Like you weren't there for me. So why are you trusting? How does he know this?
So in this book, unless I am misremembering because like the way the movie is portrayed, I'm like, it's messing with my impression of this book. That could be what's happening. But I'm pretty sure that Lucius is pretty well connected to Voldemort in this book specifically. And then like it kind of goes downhill after this. But I think in this book, he's like the most connected he ever is.
Because Bellatrix isn't back yet.
Yeah, no.
She's about to be.
Yes.
Tune into chapter, I don't know, 30, 36.
But yeah, I think he is entrusted with a lot right now. So Harry is like super pissed that Malfoy's acting like this, to which Hermione's like, I would be careful with Malfoy. One, he's a prefect now, and like, two, just like ignore, like, this is just Malfoy. It's just Malfoy being Malfoy. Like,
I also want to say this whole conversation where Malfoy is like trying to goad Harry is such... Guys, this is flirting. I don't know what to tell you. Like he's doing
Drary,
the, like,
Team Drary.
I'm not saying it's like the way you should flirt, but he's basically negging Harry. Like he wants the attention.
I was just going to say it's an egg.
Yeah. But we all know my stance on Draco
yeah,
and
me
Harry.
Too. I mean, there has to be something there. He's like infatuated with him.
I know. He's obsessed.
So Hermione's like, I just think he can make life difficult for you. To which Harry's like, wow, I wonder what it'd be like to have a difficult life. I was like, Harry with the one-liner. I just like love when he says stuff like that. Maybe it was the way that Jim Dale delivered it, but I was cracking up at that point. Wow, I wonder what it'd be like to have a difficult life.
I was not as charmed by it as Ari
you
was.
were?
No.
Must have been Jim Dale's
iconic line reading.
And then immediately after this, they run into Ginny and Luna, who are leaving herbology, right? I believe herbology. Luna walks right up to Harry and confesses that her and her father believe him, and they think everything that he said is true. They believe Dumbledore. They believe that Voldemort's back. They totally, well, she says, he who must not be named, or you know who. She doesn't say Voldemort, but she's like, I believe you, my family. We both believe you, me and my father. And then Lavender and Parvati are laughing because she has like these radish earrings in, but she misinterprets them laughing like at what she said. And she's like, you can laugh, but people didn't used to believe in something in a snorkel clackle. I don't know.
Girl, it's not even worth looking up.
People didn't believe in these two things.
Yeah.
But they exist. And Hermione's like, no, they don't. Those things don't exist. To which Luna is like, gives her like a frosty expression and then like walks
withering
away.
Look and walks away.
Yes, and then walks away. Harry's like, can you not?
Would you laugh at someone wearing just radish earrings? Like, it would be weird, right? But like, I'm not picturing them to be large either. So maybe they are like this big. That would be funny.
15-year-old girls at that age would, yes, laugh at something like that.
That's true. Yeah.
Something like that. Just something that's like a big fashion faux pas. Right after this, Ernie Macmillan very loudly vocalizes
Hufflepuff Zone.
support.
Hufflepuff Zone.
Yes. Ernie Macmillan vocalizes his support of Harry, which Harry is very appreciative of, even though he says Ernie can be a bit pompous. And I'm just like, how exactly is he pompous? What is it about him that makes him pompous? I just feel like Joe has done the thing where she's like, he's like a bit pompous character, and then that's all we get about him. I'm like,
right.
Yeah, but what is it?
I honestly wish she had like referenced back to Ernie like being a jerk in like book 2. And
yeah.
Like, oh, I appreciate how far he's come, and like,
yeah, something like that.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know how you would write that, but like, it's weird to characterize someone and then you never actually get that characterization at any point, because Ernie is never even whatever. It's just take her word for it. He's very pompous, Ari.
Yeah,
he's so pompous.
I guess. So then class starts and Pepperoni is addressing the owls as well.
Sorry.
I will never not call her Pepper. She is Pepperoni Sprout to me forever and always. She starts addressing the owls as well and like how important they are. And Harry's like, oh, can you give it a rest?
Yeah.
Jeez, I get it. This is a really major, important year. Okay, guys? Like, leave me alone. Stop it.
I will say I feel like our junior year, the equivalent would be SATs.
Like that? Oh, yeah. However,
I don't remember any teachers ever talking about the SATs. Like, I feel like they would be like, hey, make sure you schedule your SATs. Like that. They would not be like, I'm preparing you for your SATs.
No, you had to do it all by yourself.
Yeah. You had to buy the book.
Do it completely on your own.
Yeah.
The workbook or whatever.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So Harry is bombarded by Angelina, who is very upset with him for landing himself in detention on Friday during the Quidditch tryouts, which Harry's like, oh, shit, my bad.
Yeah.
He's like, oh, right. She's like, okay, well, you need to find a way to get out of that detention. I don't care what you do. I don't care if you say that Voldemort is a figment of your imagination, but you better be there.
That's
and
so
I was
funny.
Like, love you,
so
Angelina.
funny.
I know. I love her. I was like, that's right. And so basically, they all just have so much homework. There's like all this homework from all their different classes. Ron mentions that, and it's going to rain. And Hermione's like, what? What does that have to do with anything? And he's like, oh, it's just saying.
It's rain.
Just talking about the rain
in Spain.
So Harry heads to Umbridge's office for his detention. And we now get our first look into how Dolores has decorated this room. Because obviously, since there's a new professor in there every year, it always changes. And now that she is there, the room is covered in like lacy curtains. There's all these little like framed photographs of kittens. And there's dry flowers everywhere. And I was like, ew, yeah.
I had the same reaction to the dried flowers, but I think it makes sense I'll just show you the photo. How this interpretation is, at least.
Yeah. Oh, no, you did show me that before. Oh, yeah, and they're not photos. They're like plates, aren't they?
Correct.
Plates.
But I think the cats still move in them.
Yeah, they do.
Which is weird. Still confused how that magic works, but that's fine.
Yeah, what? This plate is going on the wall, so needs to work like a photograph.
That cake looks good, though.
Oh, I would love like a little cupcake right now. Yeah.
Like a strawberry raspberry filling.
Yeah, Victoria's sponge. That's what that is. She did not make that for sure. That was the house elves. So I'm going to say that's why that cake looks good.
I'm going to show this picture one more time because I do like the added detail that she has lipstick on her teeth.
Oh. Yeah, she does not look like a very pleasant woman. Her like vacant eyes. Good job to the sketch artist.
Yeah, there was no kindness given to Dolores Umbridge in that photo.
Yeah, no.
Not that she deserves it.
No. She's pretty evil.
This is a wild chapter.
Yeah. We're about to get into exactly why she's so evil. So she asks Harry to sit down. And he sees a piece of blank parchment and he's like a little confused, but he's going to try. He was instructed by Angelina to try and show up on Friday. So he's like, I have a favor to ask you. Can I skip the Friday detention and do it another day? And it says that even before he finished his sentence, he's like, I know that she's going to say no.
Yeah.
And she's like, oh, No. This is your punishment for spreading nasty attention-seeking lies.
Evil.
I actually think it's evil attention-seeking lies.
She specifically calls his lies evil, and
not nasty. Okay. Spreading.
Evil is such like an extreme.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Adjective to use.
Yeah, and she thinks it's actually good that he's going to be missing something while he's in this detention.
I'll agree with her in that regard. If you're trying to discipline somebody, you don't want them to be like, but you still get to go to the thing you want to do. Like, it does make more sense to discipline them by having them miss something that they want to do. I don't agree that he deserves this discipline, but if she believes the discipline is warranted, then that is okay. Anyway. I'm on Dolores' side.
Adam is a Dolores sympathizer. That's what he's saying. She announces that he'll be doing lines with a special quill of hers, and he must write, I must not tell lies. So Harry's like, okay, how many times do you want me to write that? And she's like, we'll just see as many times as it takes until it sinks in. And then he's like, okay, I don't have any ink. You didn't give me any ink. And she's like, yeah, you won't be needing any. So then he starts to write. And as he is after he writes, he like gasps in pain because on his other hand, I'm assuming he's right-handed, on his left hand, what he just wrote on the paper appears cut into his own skin on the back of his hand. And there's a moment, this is like so evil. There's a moment where obviously he's gasped. And so she's turned to look at him and she's like, yes. And then he's just like, nothing, and continues to write. And so then after what feels like hours of Harry writing this as it's cutting into his other hand, she asks to see his hand and says, I don't seem to have made much of an impression yet. So then she asks him to come back at the same time tomorrow and they'll continue this torture, basically.
Mm-hmm. This is where like being too brave, being too Gryffindor is the problem. Because like you should not be like, I must endure this. For what, baby? Your own ego? Like, the way I would be sprinting to Madame Pomfrey and being like, Poppy, look at this.
Yeah.
Baby. Look at my hand. I would rat her out so fast. It would make your head spin how quickly I would be in McGonagall's office.
Yeah, there's no way.
I would wake her up from slumber and be like, look at my hand. This woman is literally torturing me. There's no way this is allowed.
I feel like I definitely
Filch can't hang people by thumbs anymore. There's no way this woman should be allowed to etch. No.
I definitely would have told my friend I would have run to Hermione and tell her, and then I would have probably gone to McGonagall like with Hermione, because there's no way. I understand that this is a professor. So like, I understand that dynamic of like, there's an adult doing something. And you're the student. So there's like a power dynamic. I understand that. But like, I just think because there's an ethics thing of like, that's abuse. It's abusive. So.
Right. And he knows it. It's not that he's not under the impression that, how it reads to me is not that he is deluded into thinking that this is like a fair punishment. He knows it is wrong. He is only continuing to do it because he doesn't want to seem like the weaker person to go and like talk about it.
Yeah, he says later that it's like he knows it's it's like he knows it's just something between him and her. And I'm just like, no, you're a
buddy
kid.
Boy.
And she's like, what, a 50-year-old woman?
Sure.
I mean, don't get me wrong. There are definitely teachers that will have like vendettas like this against their students for whatever
100%.
reason. But like, there is no way, I mean, in any schooling situation that if an adult was doing this to a child, that going to the authorities, anyone would back up the teacher. Like, I don't even think Cornelius Fudge would back up that Umbridge did this. I really don't even, I feel like he'd be like, what are you doing? Well, he's cray or whatever, but like, we're not going to hurt him.
That's corporal punishment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
She even says, I know in the movie, she says something like, what Cornelius doesn't know won't hurt him. Because she just is like power hungry. She's just, she's evil. Harry goes to bed, wakes up the next morning, and he observes that Ron is like also a little disheveled.
Mm-hmm.
So something's happening with Ron. There's all these little breadcrumbs that something's going on with Ron. So basically throughout the day, Harry's just struggling through all his lessons. He's struggling to keep up with the homework. He has to like give up his lunch break to finish an assignment because he didn't have time to do any homework after the detention. Angelina is still very upset with Harry that he couldn't get out of the detention on Friday to be there for tryouts. He has mentioned to Ron and Hermione that he had to do lines.
Yeah.
But that's all he's said. So everyone's like, oh, well, that's not too bad. Oh, it's just lines, which is like even like just salt in the wound, basically. Right. That everyone's like, well, it's not that bad. But of course they don't know. And so after Harry kind of just like, doesn't clarify what the lines really mean, Hermione asks where Ron was last night. And he's like, oh, I fancy to walk. And I was like, you should have said something else because no one's going to believe. No one's going to believe that you just went out for a walk. Like literally anything else. Be like, oh, I went down to the kitchens to get
that is my first thought is he should have been like, oh, I just went and saw the house elves in the kitchen. Yeah.
To get more food. I was hungry.
Mm-hmm.
Harry once again has detention with Umbridge the following night. And it's like every night that week, obviously. So he just keeps going back. But he is determined not to show that he's in pain. So yeah, here we go with the flawed bravery.
It's like when you take your good trait to the nth degree.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
For what?
Yeah, for what?
So you win? No one's winning in this situation.
Yeah. And as the nights of detention go on, the cut in his hand like starts to stay rather than fade.
Because nobody ever finds out about this, right?
I can't remember if any of the adults find out about it.
Yeah. I mean, we know that Ron finds out in this chapter.
Yeah.
But I don't think any adult finds out. And I'm like,
no, I don't think so.
That's so crazy to me.
Which is very different than what happens in the movie, by the way. At some point while he's writing, he kind of like stops, which makes her pay attention to him. And like, she's like, okay, yeah, like, come up here. Let me see that hand. And then she's like, oh, okay, yeah. We're starting to get the idea now. It's, I'm making an impression now. Yeah. And then he's like, okay, well, are we good then? And she's like, oh no, I think you should still come back tomorrow. Come back tomorrow. We'll keep doing it.
He's like actively bleeding.
Yeah.
It's wild. It's
yeah, she's a sadist. As he's walking back to the common room, he happens upon Ron, who is like hiding with his broomstick. And then Ron is visibly startled by seeing Harry, and he's like talking really fast and just like really like caught in whatever, in some moment that Harry's like, what are you doing? Like, why do you seem so guilty? And then Ron's like, okay, well, promise that you won't laugh, but I'm trying out for keeper. I'm going to try out for the keeper. And Harry's like, why would I laugh? That's a great idea. Are you good?
Yeah.
And I was like, Harry, haven't you played with him? I just don't think that's the best response. I'm like, I feel like you should be like, oh yeah, we've played before.
Yeah.
Like, because he definitely would have played keeper if he was playing with the Weasley family, like he said. So I was like, I don't know, Harry being like, are you any good? But then maybe at the same time that kind of tracks for Harry that like he genuinely doesn't remember if Ron, if Ron was good or not. So Ron's like, I think I'm okay. He's like, I played keeper for my brothers all the time when we were growing up so they could practice. And then as they're talking about this, Harry like makes the mistake of scratching his face or something. And so Ron sees his hand, and before Harry can kind of put his hand back down, Ron grabs it. And then he's like, you said she was having you write lines. And so Harry's like, well, Ron was just honest with me about this like Quidditch situation. So I can't very well lie to him in this moment. So then he confesses to him what's really been happening. And Ron says the same thing that Adam and I said, which he's like, you need to tell Professor McGonagall.
Yeah.
And Harry's like, no, I'm not going to. And then Ron's like, okay, well then you need to tell Dumbledore. And he's like, no, I'm not going to. He doesn't like need to deal with this, whatever. And he's just like, and Harry makes the argument that he's like, I don't even know if they could do anything about it because like she's from the ministry. But I was like, I think it's worth it to try. It is a little unbelievable that like they don't tell anyone.
I just don't have this instinct in my body of being like, I will endure something even if it's like not going my way just because I need to win. No. Friday rolls around, and even though Harry has detention again, he is trying to look on the bright side because he will have a very distant view of the Quidditch pitch from the office window in Umbridge's office. From the window in Umbridge's office. Yeah. So Harry's like trying to sneak like little peeks, and he obviously has no idea who's who because it's like too far away. Although he knows who Katie Bell is. Okay. She must have like very vibrant colored hair. So he's like, yep, it's got to be her. So he's watching the various distant figures trying to guard the goals. And he notes that the first person is bad. He didn't say anything about a second person. He like skipped right over the second person. First person is bad. Third person's pretty good. The fourth person was terrible. And the fifth dodged a bludger really well, but then like fumbles what should have been an easy save. So later we find out that the last person was McLagan. But the way yeah, why did I say McLagan? McCormick. Cormick? No, I think it's Cormick McLagan.
Right? Oh, yeah, right. Cormic's his first name.
First name.
Why?
Cormick.
Cormick McLagan. Okay. I'm trying to think the way that she was talking about it, the way that Angelina was talking about it later. I'm like, who was Ron then? Because at first I was like, oh, so then Ron must have been the third. I don't know. But then the way she was saying it later, she was like, well, there were better people. Angelina's the way she talks about it. But Ron wasn't bad, and he was the most available, basically. Yeah. And so she's like, Annie comes from a family of really talented Quidditch players. So she was like, I'm hoping it's going to be in his blood a little bit, and like we can help him out.
Sure. That's not how talent works, but I mean, fine, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely agree with the idea of like, if someone does seem to be like just the best candidate, it's not necessarily about just like raw talent. Like if you just feel like, you know, someone is going to put in the work or whatever.
Oh, yeah. I think like the thing of the person, she was like, somebody was like is gonna whine about everything.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, no, you don't. As a,
Yeah,
as
you don't
a
want
team
that.
captain, you don't want that energy around.
No, definitely
And then the
not.
other person was like, I'm actually involved in many
Yeah.
student
I'll
activities.
prioritize my other things for sure.
I don't give a fuck about Quidditch.
But then that made me think, I was like, oh shoot, well then was he one of the bad people? Like, I don't know. So I don't know. I'm interested in who he was. So Harry, is trying to see this while he's also still cutting into his hand, like for multiple hours. And at the
what
end,
point does it become numb? You know what I mean? At what point do you just
Yeah.
stop feeling it?
Yeah.
God, I can't even.
I know, it's really bad. It's really bad.
I hate pain so much.
Yeah.
So I would be a big baby about this. Like a big old baby.
Just like a cut like that specifically on your skin. Like, ugh.
Well, and she describes it as like, it's almost like a scalpel has cut into him, which is like a very sharp, obviously a very sharp medical instrument.
And just that feeling of like your skin feeling really raw, like that's so uncomfortable and just like stings and like it doesn't go away for like hours.
Yeah.
So at the end of detention, when Umbridge asks to see his hand, as she touches him, he feels pain in his scar and feels a strange sensation in his midriff. So he jerks away from her. And then she's like, oh, I must have made my point. Because she thinks he's reacting to like the pain of his hand.
Right.
But he's like, does she know? Because she was like, oh, yes, it hurts, doesn't it? And then for a moment, he's kind of like, is she referring to my scar or my hand?
Right.
So he's like really freaked out. And so he kind of like just like races out of the room as fast as, or walks slowly out of the room and then like races back to the Gryffindor common room. Yeah, because he's like really freaked out. So as he comes in, Ron is thrilled because he's been chosen as the new keeper. Congrats to Ron. And Angelina apologizes to Harry because she's like, I'm sorry, it's pretty stressful being the captain of the Quidditch team. I feel like I was a little too hard on Wood now, knowing what this feels like. And then she's like, yeah, I know he's your best friend, Ron, but like he's not the best. I'm hoping that he'll just like, continue to get better and we can help him and blah, 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 blah. Like I said, he comes from a family of good Quidditch players. Fingers crossed that I'm not going to regret my decision type of thing. And then, exactly what we talked about earlier. The other people were like, complaining a lot, and then one guy was complaining a lot, and then the other person is like got a bunch of other activities on their plate that they would prioritize over Quidditch. So she's like, well, he seems to be our best bet, hopefully.
A vote of high confidence.
Yeah, I was like, all right. So that's what makes me think that like he was one of the bad ones.
Yeah.
I don't know. So Harry goes to sit down next to Hermione, who's like dead asleep, and she wakes up as Harry like drops his bag down on the table. And she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. I was up until 1 a.m. making hats.
Hermione, you're a witch. What are you talking about? You weren't making hats. A pair of knitting needles were making hats. Oh my gosh.
She would have had to. She's too smart. She's too smart to not know to enchant knitting needles to do that for her, right?
Right?
She has to be.
She says that earlier in the chapter, she says she's a very slow knitter, and so that summer she'd only been able to make a couple.
Yeah.
But then,
so then that
she
makes
was like,
it
now
sound
that
like
she's back at school, she can use magic. Because they say that she's placed a lot more around. So I think she is, maybe it's just that she's finishing them so quickly, but she's trying to crank out like, I don't know how many she thinks are cleaning the common room though.
Well, we find out.
Oh, do we?
Yeah.
We find out how many house elves clean the common room?
We find out who is cleaning the common room.
I mean, if like it can't be like 30 house elves are cleaning one common room. Like there's got to be like a division of labor, right?
We never find out how many house elves are in charge of one common room, if that's what you're asking.
Right.
We never find that out. Yeah.
Because she's placing like a shit ton of hats around.
Oh, yeah.
But like, does she actually think that like 36 house elves are cleaning one room in this? How many house elves does she think there are?
I don't know. I don't know.
It is a massive, massive medieval castle. And she's like, so there's probably about 6,000, 7,000 house elves there.
She's just like supply and demand. They are my hats are in demand, so I have to just keep making them. Like she's just
they keep leaving, so
yeah,
they keep getting taken.
But I was just like, Hermione, what are we doing, girl? So then Harry's like, I need to tell you. Harry's like, I don't care that you were up until 1 a.m. sewing lumpy hats. I need to tell you something. Harry's like, this is what just happened. He tells her what happened with Umbridge, that she touched his arm and then like his scar hurt and he had this weird sensation. And basically his theory is that maybe Umbridge is being controlled by Voldemort like Queeriness Quirrell was.
Yes. Query Quirrell.
Queero Quirrell. Queerness Quirrell. I will never get over that. That was so funny. Okay, anyways. So Hermione advises him to go to Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, at this point, Ron and Hermione both have said you should go talk to Dumbledore.
Why have friends if you don't want to listen to their advice? Why are you asking for advice?
Why have friends?
It's like when you go, I've never been a server, but I can imagine it's like when people go out to a restaurant and they're like, what's good on the menu? And the server's like this item. And then they're like, okay, well, I'll do the salad instead. And it's like, well, then why did you ask?
Yeah.
Don't ask for advice if you're not going to take it.
It's so funny to me when people do that too, because I genuinely will always, if the server, I'll typically say like, I'm between these two things. Mm-hmm. What do you think is better? And like, there's never a moment that I would be like, okay, I'll go with the other thing. Yeah, like, I'm always like, oh, well, you work here. So I'll go with what you said. You know best. Yeah. So she's like, go to Dumbledore. And Harry's like, no. But he's like, you know what? I think I will write to Sirius. And Hermione's like, you can't write that in a letter. What are you talking about? You can't send that in a letter. Like we've talked about this. You can't. The letters are being monitored. Like, right. And then he's like, oh, fine, okay, I won't. And he's like, oh, I'm gonna go to bed. And she's like, oh no, if you're going to bed, then I can go to bed without looking rude. I was like, same. Me at any party, me at any gathering with a mutual friend, and they're like, well, we're gonna head out. I'm like, oh yeah, we were just gonna go too. Yeah. always look for that opportunity. Oh yeah, okay, but yeah, we should go too. Yeah. And then there's this really sweet moment, but I was also like, oh, where Hermione's like, maybe you can join me in making my lumpy hats. Harry was like, oh no, I'm busy that day. Hermione's like, I didn't even say what day. He's like, can't come.
So sorry.
So sorry about that.
Oh my God. I haven't learned the lumpy hat charm yet. I don't know it.
I'm trying to think like, what is there an equivalent for me being like something that I like to do, and I would invite Adam and he'd be like, no. Anything with the animals, maybe.
I'm gonna go. I have to wash my hair that day. I'm so sorry. I won't be able to make it.
Me being like, do you want to go to a petting zoo? Maybe would you like going? Adam, you can come to a petting zoo with me. We'll work. We will volunteer our time.
I'm just like Harry, where I would be like, no. I wouldn't even try to come up with something. No, I'm not doing that. So funny. Oh, sorry. No, I don't think I will. I don't want to ever do that. I'm so sorry. I'd rather die. I'm trying to get better at that. I think I need to get a little bit better at just being able to be like, oh, sorry, that's not really my thing, but I hope you have a good time. Yeah. And that's it. That's the chapter. That wraps up this chapter. Next week, we'll be reading chapter 14 called Percy and Padfoot. You can find the podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you find your podcasts, as well as video versions on the Ampliverse YouTube channel and on Spotify. As always, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe so that we can get a perfect Newt score, 5 stars only, or else you'll be forced to mutilate your own body. I just like, what? Oh. It's awful.
You have to cut into your own hand.
Right. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter and Instagram at HBAnxious and YouTube and TikTok at The Ampliverse. We are hosted on Anchor and currently recorded on Zencaster, so thank you to both of them. And we are a proud member of The Ampliverse. Check them out at theampliverse.com. Thank you, Ari.
Thank you, Adam.
And as always, I must not tell lies.
Great.